All right, we have got critical mass, so let's get to it. Everybody, welcome to Classics 160T2, a classical mythology. And today is lecture 5.3 on the Homeric, or not so Homeric, hymn to Aphrodite. So I hope you guys enjoyed this text. This is the kind of all too familiar story, right? That everybody can identify with when you hook up with somebody and then you're like, oh, that was a huge mistake. Let's just not tell anybody about that. Anyway, yes, these are the tales that transcend the ages. And let's see what we got on the docket for today. We are going to start with a very brief recap of what we've been doing this week with Aphrodite and Ares and Hephaestus. And of course, loving Eros and Psyche. From there, I'm going to have Katie and Matt talk a little bit about sources, right? This is something that seems kind of straightforward, how to find sources, right? Like source for Hades or something. And it turns out it's not straightforward at all. It actually can be fairly complex. So Katie and Matt are going to take you through that. From there, Colin is going to start to talk about how we're moving from the kind of written components of the proposal itself to the actual kind of final project, which is not going to be written, but rather some sort of kind of digital engaging manifestation. And once we get through the original research proposal, one of the things that we'll do here on maybe next Friday, next Friday would be a good time for that. We'll watch a few examples of either previous students who have done something or just kind of examples I pull from YouTube that kind of give you a sense for kind of a potential kind of medium, right? Like a potential kind of mode of presentation for the final project. So after that, Darcy is going to be talking about grading rubrics, and you definitely want to pay attention to that. That is going to be all about how you guys can get an A on this thing, what exactly you need to do to get there. And then finally, Julianne will conclude with a little bit about this timeless tale, the hymn to Aphrodite, and her hooking up with Anchises and then being kind of embarrassed about that. So, announcements and recap. Announcements, all the same thing. You guys know the deal now. Put it in speaker view so you can see me, so you can see the slides. If you have questions, shoot a message to a TA, somebody who's not talking, so that they can answer you or pass on the message to me. And then the big thing, research proposal drafts are due a week from today. All right, so like pencil that in, tattoo it on your arm. I don't know, put Post-it notes everywhere. The kind of first component of the final project is due a week from today. All right, so what have we been doing this week, right? We've been talking about Aphrodite and her husband Hephaestus and her lover Ares, and about how especially Aphrodite and Ares, right, they kind of inspire these emotions that tend to make people crazy, right? Either in the bedroom or on the battlefield. One of the things that we talked about on Wednesday, right, was the story of Aphrodite and the really, really good-looking Adonis, right? And this comes out of a super weird thing where, like, Aphrodite's jealous of Mira, and then Mira, like, sleeps with her dad, and then her dad chases with her with a sword, and then she turns into a tree, and then as a tree, she gives birth to beautiful baby Adonis. And then Aphrodite and Persephone fight over beautiful baby Adonis, and they all want to hook up with him. But he's gored by this wild boar, dies far too soon. But the tears of Aphrodite, along with the kind of blood of Adonis, turn into the anemone flower. And soon after, the kind of ritual of the Adonia is one of these kind of festivals that's put on in ancient Greece, specifically by women, with the idea that there are these little kind of fast-blooming, beautiful flowers that they put up on their rooftop. They bloom and they're beautiful, but then they die very quickly. And then a kind of ritual funeral is held in honor of Adonis. One of the things that we talked about, one of the kind of important takeaways with Aphrodite, gets to the role of women in ancient Greek society, and especially the role of marriage, right? And we saw the story of the judgment of Paris, and how that's kind of a metaphor for how basing relationships, basing marriage on something other than like kind of your duty to the city-state or your duty to the family can lead to bad things, like a 10-year-long war where countless thousands of people die. And some people have also argued that this kind of idea of Peitho, right, one of the offspring of Aphrodite, that we might translate as like persuasion or compulsion, goes along with this concept of marriage as well as participation in the city-state, where especially in a democratic city-state, even if you didn't choose something, if you didn't vote for something, you're still expected to go along with it. All right, and next up we looked at poor baby Hephaestus being thrown here by his parents, Zeus and Hera, from glorious Olympus down into the real world. And we saw Hephaestus as kind of like one of the most human, right, of the gods, who just kind of toils away, making things for people, and not getting really any respect. So Hephaestus, god of the forge, right, he's jealous that his wife is hooking up with Ares, and he becomes the god of craftsmanship, right, polytechnes, many crafts, and then as well as kind of the god associated with volcanoes, that sort of thing. And there we go. I forgot I had that slide on there. Anyway, you guys can see it. That's just a summary of what I just said, right? Polytechnes, Hephaestus of many crafts, Hephaestus Calcaeus, right? Hephaestus of the bronze. And then we finished by, well, we didn't finish, we talked about Ares, and in particular, how his association with war is very different than the association some of the other gods and goddesses, in particular Athena, have with warfare. And Athena's seen as kind of the goddess of like the civilized aspects of warfare, right? Courage and bravery and coordination and teamwork, right? And like civic pride. And Ares is the god of all the terrible things, right? Like rage and bloodlust and just totally losing your mind and any control on the battlefield. And as a result, both the gods and the kind of mortals want to stay away from Ares. And so you don't actually get a lot of shrines to Ares in the ancient Greek world. Rather, you get those shrines to like Athena, who embody the kind of positive aspects of warfare. And we saw a parallel, right, between Ares and Aphrodite again in terms of kind of the emotions that they inspire end up being similar in different realms, right? Like Aphrodite's in the realm of love, Ares in the realm of battle. And then we closed with one of the great love stories of all time of Eros and Psyche that has everything from like Eros bumbling along, dropping an arrow on his foot and falling in love with her, and then Psyche being whisked away to this palace, and then uncovering Eros even though he wanted to stay hidden, and then Eros running away and Psyche running after him, and then her going through all these kind of nearly impossible tasks, right? Sorting the seeds, getting water from the river Styx, and finally getting the makeup box from Persephone herself, and making her way out of the underworld, only to open the box and fall into an eternal slumber. And then Eros, right, just as he's about to give up and think that this is a totally lost cause, he gives her one last kiss and she wakes up, and they're whisked away to Olympus and she is made immortal. One of the truly great love stories of all time. So that's what we've been doing this week so far. Now what I would like to do is turn it over to Katie and Matt to talk about sources. I will be lurking in the background. At the end of the day, feel free to throw it back to me for a few closing words. And so Katie and Matt, the stage is yours.
All right, so last week, Julianne talked a little bit about finding secondary sources, and I am going to touch on that, but I thought it might be helpful if you guys knew how to find your primary sources, so like the stories that you want to base your research on and look a little deeper into. So to start with, if you're on the D2L site and you go all the way to the end of the top bar, you'll see library tools, and it probably won't be in a drop-down menu for you guys. It should just be right after UA tools, library tools. And if you click on that, let's go to the next slide and see what that's going to show you. You're going to get this sort of list of databases that just offer some valuable resources in a number of different areas, and I'm going to touch on that briefly. But for now, let's go to the next slide and see what happens when we go to the Loeb Classical Library. Okay, so this is a good source for when you want to find all of those stories. This is going to give you plays, poetry, just all of the mythology like fragments that we have. So when you type into the search bar, I've put Aeschylus's play Eumenides in here. Let's go to the next slide. It'll give you a list of sources on the left here, and you're going to click the one that you want, and then it's going to pull up your source in both the original language and in an English translation. You guys probably aren't going to be using the original language unless you decide to major or minor in classics, and then this is going to be invaluable to you. But this will give you just sort of, just the whole work of anything that you want. They have a lot of different sources. It's just very comprehensive. You can just read the whole thing, or if you're looking for like a particular character in various works, like if you wanted to do something on Perseus, you could type Perseus into the search bar and it'll give you like a list of hymns, a list of stories where he appears, and you can go through those and decide which ones you might want to use on your project. Let's go to the next slide. All right, so when you're looking at this list of sources on the library tools, you want to pick the one that will best help you get what you're looking for. So if you're looking into maybe the architecture of temples or just some ancient art, you're going to want to go to the first link art store or the Perseus Digital Library. But if you're looking for actual written sources, you're going to want to go to Perseus, or Perseus also has written sources and translations, not for every text, so you might have to supplement that with the Loeb Classical Library. If you're just looking for, I don't know, a general overview of maybe a deity and you want to see where that deity appears in authors, you can go to Theoi and type them in, and that'll just give you a very Wikipedia-like overview of like who this deity is, like what are their aspects. It also covers myths and, of course, mortal mythological characters, and you'll be able to see like poets who might have mentioned them or playwrights. And yeah, you can, for your sources, depending on the type of project you want to do, you might want to look at other people's artwork for inspiration, or just various plays and interpretations within the ancient world. So let's jump to the next slide. So for your secondary sources, we touched briefly on Google Scholar last week, but something that's going to really help you out with finding good resources on Google Scholar. If you've ever used this before, you might have noticed that when you type something in, you're going to get a lot of things that you can't actually access. Like you have no way of reading them. It asks you to pay for it. A way to avoid that is by using the subscriptions that our library has. So if you go to your settings in Google Scholar, it's going to be those 3 lines in the upper left corner of the screen. And then you go to library links, you can add our U of A library links into your search parameters, and that will give you like PDFs. That'll give you PDFs and links so that you can actually see the various sources that you're looking at, instead of just getting a bunch of useless information that you can only read the abstracts for. I think Matt is going to give you a more specific example of how you might go about finding and using these sources. Let's push it on to him.
Thanks, Katie. So you have your topic, right? And what do you do with them? First, so I was like, I like shields. I like armor. I like weapons. I like warfare. And I started looking. I searched the internet and everything, trying to find some famous shields. I've come across 2 shields, the shield of Achilles and the shield of Aeneas. Both are from these huge epics, the shield of Achilles from the Iliad and the shield of Aeneas from the Aeneid. So the first thing I want to do is I want to find a source. I want to find the source. Where is it mentioned? So there's a lot of ways you can do this. And we've kind of talked about it before. How I did it was I looked at Loeb. And if we go to the next slide. So you see on here on the right, I went to Loeb. And that's through our library. And I just typed in the shield of Achilles. And it gives me mentions of, well, lots of shields. So I had to kind of look through it to find exactly what I wanted. But we do see here on the bottom from Homer's Iliad, the shield of Achilles. So that's a good way. That may take a while though sometimes. So another way you could do is try to narrow it down. The internet, good for just finding general stuff. Wikipedia, just real quick. Oh, I want to find maybe where this is, and then you go to that source. So if you like look on, Wikipedia for the Shield of Achilles, it'll say it's in Homer, Book 8, line 478, or Book 18, line 478. And so yeah, you go there, you check it out, and you read what you want. Same for the Aeneid. So I went, looked it up, found it in Loeb, and found the Shield of Aeneas. So I have these two things, right? I have these two sources. What do I do? Well, first you got to read them, see what they actually say. After you read them, you kind of sit there, you think about it, let it process, think about how maybe they're similar or different, what they're actually saying. So if we look into the text, we look at both of them. We see that both are forged by the divine smith, Hephaestus in the Iliad and Vulcan in the Aeneid, both pretty much the same god. Both are divinely given by their mothers. Aphrodite gives to Aeneas, and Thetis gives to her son Achilles. Right? On both of them, there are lots of images all around the shield, telling a story or doing something, and both happen right before this huge climactic battle, kind of the main fight of the story, the main duel of the story. So Achilles gets his before his fight with Hector, and Aeneas before his fight with Turnus. So just already there, I'm thinking, what do I want to do? Well, and I see these, and you can start asking questions. This is how you form topics. So kind of like a question you could ask. And the one I'm kind of asking is, why are these similar? What are the similarity and differences between the Shield of Achilles as appeared in Homer and the Shield of Aeneas as appears in Virgil? And so I have the similarities. Now look at what's different. So this is how you kind of develop a topic. You look at the source, you ask questions, and you start to find things you want to talk about. So yeah, I look at it. The kind of difference is, one, the Shield of Achilles is a little different because it kind of gives the world and kind of the way the world is and kind of the dichotomies of the world. So here you see on the bottom left, that's the Shield of Achilles. You see you have a city at peace, a city at war, kind of reaping and sowing, and all these different things. It's kind of showing the way the world is. On the other hand, the Shield of Aeneas is looking and showing kind of the way, what will happen in the future, his future, the future of his line, the future of Rome. So then, we can ask another question. What does this say? What does this say about the heroes? And why might this be different? What might this be foreshadowing? So one way we could look at this is Achilles' shield is showing the world as it is at that point, kind of the world around him. It's not showing what will happen. It's showing just then. So for those that have read the Iliad, and spoiler alert if nobody knew, Achilles dies at the end of the Trojan War. He doesn't see the future. The shield almost represents kind of this central point in time. This is where his story is. It's not before, it's not after, it's in here. This is where his line ends. Sort of. The Shield of Aeneas, though, is different. It shows the future of Rome, the future of his line. His sons will basically found a place called Alba Longa, and that will eventually lead to Romulus and Remus, the two twin brothers who were fed by the she-wolf Lupa, and they would eventually found Rome. And you see the rape of the Sabines, you see victories of Caesar and Augustus, and kind of see where this is going. Sorry for the spoilers who haven't finished Troy. Yeah, did say spoiler alert, so you could have just plugged your ears. Maybe I should have given a pause there. But yeah, so I've asked these questions. I'm looking just simply at these primary sources, and this is what I can pull out of this completely. So I know probably everybody's kind of worried about how to do this project. What do I say? What are the questions I ask? And honestly, the sources are going to tell you a lot. Think about what we've talked about in class and the different kind of ideas that we've seen about Greece. So just to kind of put it forward, what are some things that maybe y'all can see kind of versus the shield of Aeneas versus the shield of Achilles? What are some ideas that maybe you would pull out, or a question that y'all would ask when researching a topic like this? Let's see if we can get some in the chat. All right. But yeah, while we're waiting for that. So yeah, these shields are like divinely crafted, and they show, and they're meant to kind of show this divine. They also get lots of sets of, they get a full set of armor with it, kind of showing their like, almost like godly chosen one status. All right, so here's a good one. Why does one show the future and one show the present? That's a good question to ask. What do the different symbols and images depict? That's a good one. I know that some people have emailed me about looking at different types of art in later periods, like the Renaissance. There is a very famous shield of Achilles from the 19th century, I think, from a Spanish artist, I believe, who kind of attempted to make the shield of Achilles. So you can look at maybe how a piece of art like that was taken out from Aeneid, what may be different, what may be the Iliad, what may be similar. Differences and similarities. How might the shield reflect the characters of each story? Hint at their personalities and goals. That's a good one as well. So yeah, basically just when you're reading this, look into, just take a second and read every line like it's a separate line. Think about what this might say, and then think about how it's different from or similar to the other lines you're reading. And also, if you need help, Katie talked about it a little bit, and we talked about it a lot last week. You can go to secondary articles. The Shield of Achilles and the Shield of Aeneas are famous, and a lot of people have written about them. Going to places like JSTOR or Google Scholar, you can find, just honestly type in your topic and kind of go through the stuff, and you can find people that maybe have things like ideas that you could use, or that may help prove your point. So if one says, oh, the Shield of Achilles represents kind of the present, and another thing is showing that the Shield of Aeneas represents the future, that's what you want to kind of argue. And kind of pull those in, show that it's not only me thinking this, I can gather this from the evidence and see. All right, so I hope that helped everybody. Hopefully that gets everybody kind of in the mood to read sources. And we're passing it on to the next person, who I think is Colin, right?
All righty. Hello, everyone. We're so glad you're here. All right, this is going to be a quick slide, but we just want to touch on the creative aspect. And like what my other colleagues were saying, is that we want you to make something that's original and that is expressing your voice and your ideas. And you can read all the secondary literature in the world and not come up with your own idea. But we want you to make something that is expressly your idea. So what we want you to do, more or less, is, as Matt was saying, you want to delve into the primary sources over the secondary sources. If you can pull out more information and myth, information and understanding and nuance from the primary sources, that's amazing. The secondary sources should be there to guide you, and especially for myths that are 2 millennia, almost 3 millennia apart, there's a lot of explanation that needs to happen, especially if you're not familiar with them. So, we want you to refer to the authors and to their work and what they're doing, and we use the secondary sources as a way to, like, oh, I never thought about the myth of Hades and Persephone that way, so let's go take this other avenue. For the final project sheet, we want you to more or less refer to the primary sources over the secondary sources. and you should be able to explain the references. You don't want to, we really don't want people to use a secondary source that cites a primary source as the reference. Like, that's not good. It's not good scholarship. But so for the style, so there's a ton of different things you can do. And again, this is so broad, and Dr. Rob has made it so broad that you can incorporate whatever you want. So video, documentary, podcast, dance, a song, cartoon. There really is endless amounts of ideas that you can take away from this. And as we were saying, your analysis / take is the most important aspect. So whether that means you're delving like into one specific aspect of a myth, that's great. Or if you're going to do a broad survey, that's fine too. But using this obviously you'll be using this in a creative manner. And please reach out to us. I've had a few people who have said, I don't know if this is going to work. Doing a modern idea and an ancient idea, like, yeah, no idea is off limits. All right. With that, I'm going to kick it over to the next person.
Hey guys, let's take 2 minutes here and go ahead and head to D2L. Hercules is green today, so go ahead and click green, and I'll see everybody back here in about 2 minutes. Okay, so let's go ahead and move forward. So if we can go to the next slide, there we go. So, okay, if you guys look at the assignment sheet for the rough draft, which again is due next Friday, at the bottom, you're gonna see Cicero's 5 canons of rhetoric. So this is basically what we're going to be looking at when it comes to grading. Now, if you take a look at it, you'll see that the bottom 2, Memoria and Accutio, are basically for oral presentations only. So those aren't necessarily going to apply to what we're doing here, but I'm sure throughout your college career, you guys are going to have plenty of opportunities to do oral presentations. So keep that in the back of your mind. These are good things to know. Then in terms of dispositio and elocutio, make sure you guys are using proper format. Read through it out loud. That usually helps. Write everything up and take a couple of read-throughs. Make sure you're doing proper formatting. 12-point font, Times New Roman. Get your paragraphs where they need to be. If you guys have any questions about that, feel free to contact me or one of the other TAs. We'll go ahead and walk you through it. but I really wanted to focus today on the first one. So I think that you all are probably in different phases of the project. I imagine some people have got a pretty good handle on everything and they're just about finished up. Other people, I imagine, are still trying to figure out what their topic is going to be. So I just want to kind of address a few different facets of the spectrum of preparation of where people are for that right now. So let's go ahead and move forward. Okay, so composing a great research project. So Inventio is really your spin. I mean, what are you putting into this project of yourself? So we've talked about making sure you have an extremely narrow topic. Seriously, that's going to really help you out when it comes to finding research and clarifying your ideas and figuring out exactly what it is you want to say. So your paper really should, or your project overall really should provide an in-depth answer to a specific question. So once you get this extremely narrow topic, go ahead and figure out what your question is. What exactly are you trying to think about? What are you working towards, really? So in the end, that's going to allow you to put forward your own original analysis. Again, what's your perspective? What new information can you contribute to the conversation? We've been talking a lot about sources today. So, I mean, if you take a look at some of these secondary sources and people are giving their own perspective, what can you add to that conversation? What spin can you put on it? Let's go ahead and move to the next slide. Okay. So in terms of just figuring out what your topic is going to be, think about the areas that you already have an expertise in. I mean, what do you know a lot about? It could be maybe dance or food. Maybe you really like to eat, really like to cook. Think about how you can incorporate that interest into Greek mythology. Psychology, maybe you're a student of psychology, horses, naval campaigns. Think about the things that you're good at, the things that you know a lot about, and then just combine those things with myth. And then think about a really good question that combines those two worlds. So just to give an example, before I became a student, I did an enlistment in the Navy. So I thought maybe a good project for me would be something to do with naval campaigns. Now that's really pretty broad. Myth and naval campaigns could give me a lot of information, and I really don't want to sort through all that. So just maybe do some preliminary research. I honestly just typed it into Google and saw what popped up. And I happened to find this little note about Plutarch writing about Themistocles, who was a general in the Greco-Persian Wars. He was kind of the big name at the Battle of Salamis, but before the Battle of Salamis, he kind of initiated a human sacrifice. So that got me thinking, Themistocles had this human sacrifice. Why would he decide to perform a human sacrifice prior to this battle? And then, we've seen this before. We saw it before the Mycenaeans went over to the battle at Troy. Agamemnon performed a human sacrifice on his own daughter. So what is it about human sacrifice in these naval battles? Okay, that's kind of how I focused down my topic. So let's go ahead and move forward. Okay, so let's start figuring out how we can start coming up with these questions for our topic. So just some common ways to think about moving this very narrow topic into a question. Just think about changes over time in the ancient world. What can we take from this period to that period? Oh. Okay, so what can we take from this period to that period and just kind of meld them together and look at the two different similarities, differences. How do we compare and contrast? Also, comparisons between ancient and modern. How can we look at today in light of this reflection of the past? Just cross-cultural comparisons. How can we take Greco-Roman cultures and compare them to other cultures that we come across? And then we talked a little bit about psychology before. Apply a theory from a different field: sociology, psychology, biology. Are you a student of something that you think could apply to the world of myth and the world of, Greco-Roman society? So just try and make some of those connections. And then look at the different things that we have today in our modern world: TV, movies, architecture, video games, books. I mean, how can you start to contribute your own spin in light of the information and technology that we've created today, in terms of the connections to the past? So let's go ahead and move forward real quick. Let's go ahead and just take 5 minutes. If you're at a point where you need to start really solidifying your project topic, go ahead and take 5 minutes, try and jot down 3 of these questions, and just start to think about, really focusing your topic. If you're already there, if you're already focused, let's go back to just what Julianne and Matt were telling us about sources and start really looking into your sources. And during this 5 minutes, myself and the other TAs will be available on the chat. So please hit us up if you guys have any questions. So, okay, go ahead and begin.
Okay, so I think we're going to go ahead and move on to make sure that we have a little bit of time to talk about the Homeric hymn to Aphrodite in class. So if you guys are still thinking about your topic, that's great. Maybe shoot us an email instead, and then that way you can have our feedback after the Zoom call in, and the just isn't lost forever. So we want to kind of start by talking about the hymn to Aphrodite here. So you guys all read it for your reading response, and I wanted to start just with this excerpt. Again, we're going to try and do a close reading. This is the skill that will help you when you're working on your project, when you read the texts, so you can kind of notice things that you want to talk about for your presentation. So this reading that we have right here says, "As for me, I will have a great disgrace in the eyes of the immortal ones, a disgrace that will last for all days to come, without end, all on account of you, my trysts and stratagems with which I used to get all the immortal gods mated with mortal women, used to be feared by them. My power of nous used to subdue all of them. But now my mouth can never again boast about this among the immortals. I have gone very off track in a wretched and inexcusable way. I have strayed from my nous. I got myself a child beneath my waistband, having slept with a male mortal." Okay, so I just want to kind of start with what things you guys noticed from this specific passage. For the reading response, you kind of had to talk about the relationship between gods and mortals. So is there anything specific in the language here that you guys noticed about that relationship? Go ahead and send me a chat, and I'll read out some of your observations. It could be related to anything, maybe shame, disgrace amongst the gods, the relationship between gods and men. Mortals are looked down upon. Nice. The gods consider it a disgrace to have kids, yet it seems dishonorable to sleep with mortals. She's ashamed, no longer the purest god. Nice. These are all great observations. Anything else just from this passage? Blames him for getting her pregnant. Yeah, even though Zeus tricked her. Nice. Why did Zeus get to fall in love with the mortal ladies? Nice. So maybe picking up on a double standard. It's embarrassing to sleep with mortals. Yeah, these are all really, really great stuff. So kind of just moving along here. Human and immortal relationships seem to be secretive. Yeah. They intimidate mortals. Interesting. Yeah. These are all really great. So, again, and if you have more stuff, just keep sending it in. So again, it tells the story of Aphrodite and Anchises. And if you remember, Aphrodite was already involved with Adonis, but here it's Anchises. And so, like it kind of said, the relationship between gods and mortals, their shame. Someone says, why is she ashamed of kids when Zeus wanted to protect his kids, which shows not as much shame? Are you asking, is it there less shame for Aphrodite or Zeus? Is that what you're asking? If you could clarify that question, that would be great. And then hopefully I could help answer. But also, if we just kind of think about the hymn to Aphrodite as a whole, how is she portrayed? It starts by, she's great, but like second paragraph in, here are the three goddesses that she doesn't hold power over. And the main story that they tell here in this hymn to Aphrodite is about her greatest embarrassment. So what do you guys think might be going on with her portrayal in this? Again, just any kinds of observations. We have gods and goddesses seem to coexist in Greek mythology a lot more freely than they would in any other religion. Interesting. You're my biggest fan. Thank you. So why is it shameful when they all had kids with mortals? That's a really interesting question. What do you all think of that? Why is it shameful when they all had kids with mortals? Yeah, someone says it's kind of rude that it's embarrassing, but then Aphrodite goes around bragging about convincing them to sleep with mortals. Yeah. Like Zeus wanted to protect one of his sons, but the other god said he couldn't save him from death. Okay, yeah. So, we've got some answers here. Maybe it's embarrassing because the mortals aren't as divine as the goddesses. Oh, we've got a bunch of stuff coming in here. There's the hierarchy. Okay, and so sleeping with someone inferior might be embarrassing. Yeah, the mortals are seen as lowly and the gods have the superiority complex. Nice. And so it's Aphrodite kind of boasted about making the other gods sleep with mortals because she was boasting that she had the power over them. But now that she herself has fallen prey to the same power, it's not as funny to her anymore. Yeah, plot twist. Yeah, the double standard. Yeah, great. I think this is all really great comments that you guys are making. Oh, how the tables have turned. Nice. Okay. So I also kind of wanted to touch on really quickly here while we still have time, the significance of the hymn to Aphrodite in Roman history, because Aphrodite and Anchises together created Aeneas, who, if you're familiar with the story of the Aeneid, is the mythic founder of Rome. And so Aeneas indirectly founds Rome. He actually is the ancestor of Romulus and Remus, who are the two main founders of Rome. They are suckled by the she-wolf, and then Romulus founds Rome and kills Remus, so it's not Reme, it's Rome. And so you have in Rome this coat of Venus Genetrix, Venus the begetter or Venus the mother, because you do have Romans that trace their ancestry up through Romulus and Remus to Venus. Most importantly, you have the first emperors of Rome. So Julius Caesar, who wasn't exactly an emperor, but he adopted Emperor Augustus. And so the Julio-Claudian dynasty, the first emperors of Rome, they trace their lineage back up through Aeneas as well, which means that Venus is kind of seen as this very important, like I said, founding figure, Venus the mother. And then the Julio-Claudians, especially Emperor Augustus, would they set up all these temples to Venus Genetrix, like right in the middle of the forum. And so she becomes a very important figure in Roman mythology as well. And you kind of see the beginning of this in the hymn to Aphrodite. But yeah, so we have just a couple minutes left, so I'm going to pass it back to Dr. Rob. But yeah, if you guys have any other questions or anything about your topics or this, feel free to message or email your TAs. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, TAs. That was wonderful as usual. I have basically nothing left to say except thank you guys for a great class. Students, you guys are doing a bang-up job. I guess my final thing will be, okay, as you guys start your research proposals and you get towards Friday next week, it's very, very common to have some last-minute questions, okay? And you're going to be firing those off to your TAs, and they're going to do their best to get back to you. Don't expect an answer before the thing is due if you're emailing on Thursday. All right, you got to get any questions in by Wednesday at the latest in order for them to kind of guarantee an answer to you, right? And the earlier you get those questions in, the more substantive and the better those responses are going to be. So start this thing early so that you don't end up in a bind in the last minute. Get any questions to your TAs by Wednesday so that they have plenty of time to respond to you. And have some fun with it. Go figure out something you're really interested in and start investigating. Have a great weekend, and we will see you on Monday. Bye, everyone.